You are listening to the Maple Footy Podcast. This is the unofficial football podcast of the North. I'm your host, Sam Little. Find me at official Sam Little on Instagram. There's nothing left to say except for sit back, enjoy, and welcome to the show.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Maple Footy Podcast. And today I have a very special guest. He's a very close friend of mine, someone who I look up to in the industry. He works with Jucasa Radio and at Indy 101.5. His name is Jonathan Mangiapane, and I'm very excited to have him here today.
Wow, that's quite the introduction, Sam Little. Wow.
Thank you.
Someone you look up to, that's dangerous.
Oh, shoot, is it?
I think so.
Should I cut that out just in case, like...
For your own sake,
for
I
my
think
own
you
sake,
should cut that out, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm flattered, but...
Okay, I'm glad.
Come on, get a grip here.
I'm glad to know that.
Yeah.
I'll make an edit later. So, we're here, obviously, about to talk about Canada's Copa run.
Yes.
Yes, we are. And
heck yeah.
I wanted to have John on here because he, as I've talked about in past episodes, I loved seeing how casual football fans kind of hopped on the Canadian hype train during this Copa run. And John is a casual football fan.
Casual?
So, yeah, just casual.
I don't get dressed up or anything.
Yeah. So, I wanted to have him on, see what he was thinking about our Copa run, why he was so invested in it, So, yeah, really, what really made you want to start watching these games?
Well, listen, I'm a Canadian, so when I hear Canada's going to be out there, I got to support them, you know what I mean?
Oh, it's a patriotic thing?
Yeah, I mean, those are my boys. Those are my boys. You got to support them.
Before this month, he could just name Alphonso Davies.
Who?
Yeah, he's the only one that you can't name. You're
Can you spell that? That's the guy with the shorts running around the field all the time.
Yeah, and he has a number on his back, and he plays professionally.
For Canada,
of course.
Yeah.
No one else, just Canada. But yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on because Copa was not really a known thing for Canadians, especially Canadians who don't follow the sport. So genuinely, I'm not even ribbing at this point. Did you know what Copa was before June?
Yes. Yeah, I was familiar with Copa. I mean, I'm familiar with most of the major trophies and stuff. I think what was kind of bizarre is that it was happening basically day by day with the Euros.
Yeah.
Which is something everyone knows, FIFA and the Euros, but
yeah.
Obviously Canada isn't in that, so
yeah, and we've never even been in the Copa. This is our first time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that's pretty impressive, and it was in the States, which was kind of different because it's usually in a South American setting.
I think that played a big role in it too, and just general publicity. Because it's not like soccer is huge in the U.S. either.
Yeah.
It's bigger, I guess, than it is in Canada, but still not.
Still not massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, they like American football.
Yeah, compared to actual
football.
American football or baseball or
Yeah.
even hockey, I feel like, maybe not hockey, but
hockey in some parts.
in some parts.
Closer to the border.
I mean, I think that's a big part why Canada isn't a super soccer nation is just because you can't really play it for half the year. You can. They have indoor, but obviously if you're down south, you're bored, you want to play a sport, just go outside with a ball and you're good to go.
Yeah, just literally the one thing you need is a soccer ball. You can make a net of literally
and
2 pebbles.
A flat, somewhat even surface.
Yeah.
Snow and ice aren't very applicable for that.
Well, ice can be flat, but it would not be.
But then, at what point does it just become hockey?
Now I kind of want to see that though, our Canadian boys, playing
ice footy,
because that'd be kind of funny if you ask me.
Yeah, I talk about slipping all the time. The penalties would go crazy.
That'd be very confusing though, because in soccer, you have a penalty, but then hockey you have a penalty, but it's just a totally different thing. Mm-hmm. What would we do? I don't know.
Well, that was an interesting thing actually that you mentioned that between hockey and soccer, because one thing I noticed watching the Copa run, especially in Canada's critical game against Uruguay, was that the penalties, especially in like the last like 10 minutes, were kind of coming out pretty heavy. And I think if Canada really wants to pursue, like they obviously did great this year.
Yeah.
The best the team has ever done. They were in the tournament to begin with, right? Let alone beating out the U.S. and Mexico just overall, as well as, you know, Venezuela was a top team in the end of it. And even, you know, facing off against the other teams. But I think one of Team Canada's problems was that they just don't play dirty enough.
Yeah, no, I would agree
and
with
that's the thing, you know, in hockey, you got to play dirty. And in soccer, I'd say probably even more so.
I would agree, especially in a competition like Copa, where it is known to get cheap at times, kind of really physical, like you said, those fouls that Uruguay was kind of committing or trying to win.
Yeah.
We didn't really do that a whole ton this tournament.
No, and that's something you have to do to play,
Yeah.
especially, like you said, at that level.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, the guys down south, they just know what they're doing. You know,
Yeah.
this is their life. They live and breathe this stuff. So they know how to do it and get away with it. And that's what I think Team Canada needs to build upon if they want to move forward, keep that momentum going.
I would agree with you. And it's funny that you say that because Alistair Johnston, who's on the national team, he was saying that Jesse Marsh was telling the boys that they need to be less nice and more mean on the pitch. So obviously that's something that they've at least noticed and have taken note of. Because, I mean, you know, you see Argentina, and I hate how that they play. I've said it before. I don't like all those antics of all that. But, like, it obviously works. You know, like you saw,
exactly.
Like, they won it again.
Yep.
They beat us twice, you know. So it works because it really knocks your opponent off the game. And especially with how we play, we don't play like that. So it's going to have a great effect on our results and how we play.
Yeah.
But I do like that you noticed that. He did his research. And I do appreciate
I came
that.
in here. Casual fan, my butt.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You know, I take away the casual fan title.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm honored.
You're just a fan.
By the end of
a
this...
business fan.
A business fan. I do get dressed up. I wear a tie. No, but, you know, going back to that point, I think on the outside looking in, you know, soccer, football is a very simple sport, right? I mean, you're running back and forth with this ball, and every sport is pretty simple at the end of it. So it's those little things you can do to push yourself forward, to push the team forward. And, I mean, I think morale is a really huge thing, and that's where playing dirty comes in. Yeah. You know, it's a huge boost to get away with it, obviously, and also to bring the other team down. So I think what they should do, much like I think you could say that there's a southern style to the sport, I think Canada needs to reinvent the game in its own way and how they play and bring that to the next tournament. Yeah. And you could see some pretty big strides if that's what they take. And I think Jesse Marsh, like you mentioned, I think he's doing good so far. Yeah. And it sounds promising, the directions he can take this team.
It does, and especially because he came in, like, I think it was just under a month before Copa started.
Yeah, it's like immediate.
Yeah, so he has to basically adapt, and this tournament was, I don't want to say sink or swim, but it was kind of, he's either going to really get people on his side, or if we bomb out in the group stage, not a great start to your national team career. Yeah. But I think the fact that he got us to the semis and then obviously the third place game, I think it really does go a long way into giving our team and I think supporters like a good, like you were saying about morale. I think that is a bit of a morale boost because it kind of shows that we can hang with the best of them. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the only team that beat us full stop was Argentina, who are the defending champs, the defended champs, and the world champs. So to say that we went blow for blow with Uruguay, beat Venezuela, beat Peru, tied Chile, I think that's really great going into 2026 as one of the host nations as well, because there is always going to be expectations on the host nation.
Right.
So
it adds credibility to the team.
Exactly. We're not just like, oh, they're here because they paid to host.
Right.
Like, they're here because, like, they actually have something.
Yeah.
Because I think a disappointing factor of our World Cup run in 2022 was we did an amazing qualifying campaign, only to, in all fairness, we were drawn in a really tough group, but only to then kind of just show up and lose every game.
Right.
Like, it was amazing being there, absolutely. But now I think the expectation needs to change from being there to actually competing at these things, as we've now shown that we can. So I think that's a very interesting thing to take into the World Cup, and I think Copa played a massive part in that. And I think Jesse Marsh has played a big part of that because, like I said on a previous podcast, I'm not a massive fan of how he plays at times. I think it's kind of boring and stagnant, but it was getting us results throughout the Copa.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it did work, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that every game was really beautiful because there weren't really any clear wins except the one game against Peru.
Yeah.
Which is a bit too tight for my liking. But otherwise, I mean, yeah, we legitimized ourselves, I think, on a global stage as a team.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of just, like you said, just keeping that going forward.
And I think the term legitimize is very important because we've been wanting, as like a nation trying to support this, for our boys to kind of be looked at as legitimate instead of just, oh, they're the Alphonso Davies team.
And I think I think a big part of it too was because, for the past few years, the women's soccer team, women's soccer in Canada has been going phenomenal. Yeah. Performing excellent. So I think by bringing up the men's league too, it just, once again, legitimizes it, but it's like, okay, well, maybe they're just lucky with this one team, right, as a country. Because I know a lot of people were shocked even with the women's team, Canadian women's team, performing well. But now between both of them, it's like, okay, could Canada be a soccer country? Like, is there potential for growth there?
Yeah, and I think, like you were saying, the women's have been doing this for a little bit now. I mean, going to be defending gold medalists in the Olympics. That's starting in
next week.
Literally a week.
Yeah.
So, and
as
now
of recording this.
Yeah, as of recording. So now that our men have kind of shown, like, they're getting serious too, and like I said, we're not just the Alphonso Davies team, which I feel like we were really known as. I mean, look at guys that had breakout tournaments. Like, you look at Schaffelberg, Bombito, Cornelius, Liam Miller, even Jonathan David is always one of those strikers that could be potentially on the move. So you kind of look at these guys and you're like, oh, okay, like, maybe they're more than just the Alphonso Davies team. And that's no disrespect to Alphonso Davies, obviously.
No, but if you don't want your team to rely on one guy.
Exactly. Yeah. And we showed that we're not as reliant on him as we say maybe have been in the past. So I think it is really important, like you said, to legitimize us and show that we're actually getting there to being a footballing nation.
Because that's the same thing that happened with the women's team. Was for a while there, people were just assuming it was Christine St. Clair doing all the work. Yeah. But then when she was out those past few games and now she's gone, like, she won't be there in the Olympics. Yeah. The pressure's there, but they did also manage to prove themselves by performing well. So,
yeah, I mean, Christine St. Clair did leaps and bounds for this country, I think, even for the men's game. Like, without the women's team, I don't think our men's team is anywhere near where they are right now. So I think a lot of the credit does need to go to Christine St. Clair. And John Herdman, I think, was a massive part in that when he was with the women's and then obviously with the men's. So I think it's kind of funny how they kind of mirror each other. With we were the Christine St. Clair team, and then we were the Alphonso Davies team.
Exactly.
And now it's kind of like, oh, because of their contributions, we now actually have players, like, on the women's side, Jessie Fleming, and then on the men's side, you got, all these, like, Jonathan David, like, you have all these guys. So I think it's it's kind of funny how they mirror each other.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a natural progression of any sport
Yeah.
and most teams. But it's just moving past that initial player and hoping that they can spread whatever they know across the team, that talent or whatever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I just want to, I want to kind of go back to, what really pulled you in for this kind of run? Outside of being Canadian, what really grabbed you about our Copa run?
Well, I think initially it was, you do have that general interest.
Yeah.
Team Canada's out there again.
Yeah.
And then it was just that they played well.
Yeah.
They had a very strong start.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that crumbled a little bit as the series went on. But I think it's just when you think, okay, your team is doing well, and you have those same thoughts about, okay, it's Canada, soccer,
Yeah.
How's it going to go? But they performed, and they give you reason to be invested in the sport.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, I think, was the big draw.
Yeah, no, you say that they give you a reason to kind of watch and be invested. And I think that's a major component of trying to build this program and the support behind it. Because if there isn't, obviously, if there's not that interest, how are you going to how's it going to grow if there's no interest in this? So I think it's important to have outings and tournaments, performances like we did, because like you said, it kept your interest because they gave you a reason to.
Yeah. Like with any sport, I mean, no one wants to cheer for a losing team, right? Maybe you can't say that in the
team.
GTA, land of Toronto, but, if they win, if they give you a reason to watch, if they play entertaining, then and even down, they nearly had that last game against Uruguay too, except for those last 2 minutes, everything changed.
Yeah.
Which was insane. But if they had done that, just imagine the fallout in the country.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting too when it comes to an international sport like soccer as well, where it gets very competitive, even amongst fans.
Yeah.
Because Canada is obviously a very diverse place. So, the amount of cars I saw that had Colombian flags or Argentina flags, it is insane. So, I think too, just because it's maybe not towards Team Canada, doesn't mean that there isn't interest in the tournament or the sport.
Yeah, and I think that's where we kind of need that almost turning point, is that interest needs to be in Canada, if that makes sense. Because everyone has those teams and players that they want to support, and like you said, we're a very diverse country, so everybody has everybody who we talk to is they're from X, Y, and Z. Their parents are from X, Y, and Z. So like you said, it's very diverse, but we do need these moments to be okay, the Canadian men are worth kind of investing this time into. And like you said, no one wants to cheer for
a losing team.
Side.
Yeah.
Outside of the GTA.
Yeah, outside of the GTA.
But yeah, no, I mean, I do think it was very interesting to see, but even when I'd be driving around, I would see a Colombia flag, but then also on the other side a Canada flag as the tournament went on, which I thought was really, I guess, really cool, because it goes from so obviously they have Colombian heritage, but they're also here and they're rooting for Canada because you see the flag's gone up. So it is, it's kind of one of those things where it's okay, so people are kind of taking notice. They are taking interest.
Well, it is a little bit of an underdog story.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's kind of what we've been getting at, is that, Canada on paper shouldn't be winning this tournament, yet here they are nearly in third place. That's insane. So I think, like we said, if there's reason to be invested in this team, and they've shown that I think there is, then there will be that interest. So I think now it's just kind of keeping that momentum for the next 2 years, and when they host in 2026, when we host with the U.S. and Mexico, if we can perform just as well then, on a real global stage.
Yeah, because the World Cup is obviously Copa and Euros are obviously massive, but World Cup is the biggest one. And as the host nation, you don't want to be embarrassing and go out in the group stage of your host campaign.
And like you said, you don't want to be the guy who's just there because like he has to be there, right? We're hosting, so we're going to be there anyways.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to know that we would have earned that spot even if we weren't hosting.
Yeah, and it is nice because like we did earn that spot with the 2022 World Cup, and now like this Copa has kind of shown, even if it wasn't potentially in Canada, I think we would probably be there.
Yeah.
Given that, top 4 in Copa, and we look like we're getting better. Because I thought this obviously was an improvement on the World Cup, given that we made it out of the group.
Made it anywhere.
Yeah, made it out of the group stage. But no, we looked, obviously we still had our moments where we didn't look maybe quality-wise or experience-wise up there with the best of them. But we looked more experienced post-World Cup than we did, say, at the World Cup. Because at the World Cup, I think we were lacking that, I guess, experience of being in that top stage because we'd never been there. But now that they've kind of been there, maybe it's a confidence boost, maybe it's a confidence thing. Or
definitely.
Because, I mean, in the World Cup, we hung with Belgium. We hung with Croatia for a portion of the game, and then we kind of got blown away. And then Morocco we kind of hung with. So, like, we showed we could hang with them, but we didn't get the results. Here, we hung with Argentina, but then we beat Peru, draw Chile, beat Venezuela, have to hang with Argentina again. And then, like you said, are 2 minutes away from literally beating Uruguay and becoming third place. So, we actually now have results, concrete results to show, okay, so it's not just that we can be there and maybe compete, we can actually compete. Yeah,
we can show our work.
Yeah, exactly. And instead of just, well, we were there.
And I think to give credit too is like you said, aside from the Uruguay game, the only games we lost were against Argentina, which I don't think anyone would have really expected us to win either way.
Yeah.
Just because Argentina is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think like that's something to really kind of leave with your head kind of held high, because like the only team that beat us was Argentina. Like, I know Uruguay did technically beat us, as they did, but I mean, like, the only team that beat us in a 90 minutes was
and they're maybe the only team we didn't really give a run for their money. But yeah, they're like in a whole other league. But so I think when you're playing against Argentina, and even just to perform and keep that momentum going in the tournament is definitely a huge confidence boost for the team, like you said. Yeah. And it just, you get that experience, because I'm sure it's extremely nervous too.
Oh, absolutely.
To be the only North American nation that's left in the tournament, and to be beating these teams, even just narrowly, or to even just be sharing the pitch with Argentina, you know, is pretty insane. And I think the growth of the MLS as well has kind of reflected Canada's performance on that larger global stage as well.
I would definitely agree with that, because I think people rag on the MLS like a lot, but I think MLS, I'm going to make 2 points here, has given us some really good players out of there. Obviously, Davies came from there. Kyle Larin came from there. But then even recently, Alistair Johnston came from, he was at Nashville, then he went to Montreal, and now he's playing with Celtic in Champions League. And then obviously, like, I'm sure we'll talk about him probably very soon, is Ishmael Kone. Recently, as 2 years ago, I think, came from Montreal, went to Watford, and now has moved on to Marseille. So we're kind of seeing this development in these Canadian players in the MLS, as well as I think our Canadian players that are in the MLS are very good, I would say.
Yeah.
Like, look at our Crepeau, for me, was our player of the tournament. I thought he was unreal, and he plays with Portland Timbers. Like, Moise Bombito plays for Colorado. Obviously, I think he's going to be on the move, but at this moment and at the time of him being in the tournament, he's an MLS player. Jonathan Osorio, Richie Larea, MLS regulars. So, I mean, people do rag on the league a lot, but like you said, I think the kind of the rise of the MLS has kind of really helped coincide with the rise of our national team.
Yeah. It gives us stomping ground. It gives us somewhere to train our legs, you know, rather than just being a really dinky league
Yeah.
and then going on the world stage. You have a place where, because it's going both ways too, because now that Messi's in the MLS, there's definitely interest there for other players who maybe want to relax a little bit. Obviously the pay is not the same, but which is definitely a big factor, but because that spreads. I doubt you can share a field with Messi and not go home with something kind of learning experience. So it's just becoming, I think, a more of an international experience and more of an international sport generally across these leagues. So it's going to rub off, and definitely I think that was a big part of why we were able to perform so well in the Copa.
Yeah, I think so too. And like we were saying, I think even looking at the CPL for Canada, I think has helped a lot, because it gives Canada almost like the stomping ground of the stomping ground. It is that a little bit below the MLS, but we're seeing Canadian players getting to develop. And if we can actually put in maybe more investment or more attention into the league, I think, because Jesse Marsh has been pretty outspoken of supporting CPL and getting behind it, because guys like Moise Bombito weren't discovered until they were 23, whereas in Europe, by the time he's 23, he would have probably already played 3 to 5 professional seasons.
You're slowly wrapping up your career by then.
You're basically done. Whereas he's obviously you're not actually basically done, but whereas he's really just starting out. It's he's 23. There are 23, 24-year-old center backs now that have played Champions League finals, have won World Cups, have been in the world. Bombito still hasn't had that. This is the biggest that he's played to so far. So if we can maybe get behind the CPL a bit more and really get that as the spot for young Canadian players to really develop, potentially go into the MLS or otherwise, I think that's definitely a start too, to kind of really get our momentum going and keeping this train almost going along.
Absolutely, because I think too, if you're an upcoming player and you're looking for where to go, it's kind of a big leap to go from just a national league to what's next, champions. You don't just go over there. So it does offer, just for the player themselves, some building blocks, somewhere to go.
I would totally agree, and I think that's one of the reasons why CPL needs to kind of really be gotten behind, because if, like you said, you're a young player and you're coming from national leagues, and then you go, okay, so it's either MLS, Europe, or I'm done. You know, instead now it's okay, CPL's there, I can play there for a little bit, then hopefully progress further on.
It doesn't feel as redundant what you're doing,
So I think that's
I imagine I don't play in any of those leagues.
Neither of us play professionally. So, but I want to move on a little bit to kind of who and what impressed you the most about this run.
Who and what?
Yeah, we can start with one or the other.
Well,
first.
I think it's really, I feel like it's a good question, but I feel like the answer is kind of dumb, because I just feel like the overall performance was really what stood out. If you had told me, 2 months ago, hey, Canada's going to have a shot at third place in the Copa America, I'd be like, that's not true. You're lying to me. You're pulling my pants down. So I would really just say the performance, and then I think that comes back to who, and that is, I think, once again, Mr. Marsh, because like you said, it was a couple days before, I'm pretty sure, maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah, it was a couple weeks before Copa started.
A couple weeks, and it's hey, you're in charge of this now.
Yeah.
And now he has to get all these guys under this new, leadership.
Yeah.
And get them, ready while they're already, prepping for the tournament. So I would definitely say those two things, Jesse Marsh and just his execution of the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
standouts for me.
Yeah, I think that's really fair, because I think he made us a really hard team to beat, because even Argentina, it wasn't it was 5-4-0 type thing. It was both 2-0s pretty close. We had our chance in those games. We weren't an easy. I think a lot of people expect us to be this easy rollover and
that's
they'll
what,
get the 3
that's
points.
what I was thinking. I mean, I imagine for teams like Argentina, or even Venezuela, Uruguay, to say, like, how much of a fight is Canada really going to put up here?
Yeah.
And so I think maybe he used that to the team's advantage, that kind of unsuspecting underdog attitude.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like we said, it's a dirty sport. You got to play with what you can play with, so...
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think he was very impressive. Was there any player that particularly stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Jonathan David did a strong tournament, but Ishmael Kone as well was a big standout for me, especially in some of the shootouts there.
Yeah, his penalty against Venezuela, absolutely. I mean, Ishmael Kone has kind of been a little bit known, but now he's very much known. I mean, he impressed in the friendlies beforehand as well against Netherlands and then definitely against France, and now he's doing it in a major tournament. So it's good to see like a young Canadian player getting some hype behind him again.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of why I was interested in him.
Yeah.
Is just the idea like this is a homegrown thing.
Yeah.
Like if he can do it, then anyone can. It's possible for us to produce that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think because we've had I don't want to say so few recently guys go from MLS, as we have kind of talked about them going through, but it feels like we haven't had this level of player kind of come from the MLS and now is going off to Europe with a top team. It feels like we haven't had that since Alphonso Davies.
Right.
Because Alistair Johnson has left, Kyle Larin has left, but it feels like there was Alphonso Davies and then Tajon Buchanan, and now it's Kone coming from the MLS into now Europe, because he's going over to Watford in the second tier of England, which is it's a good kind of first move, but then it's kind of okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Because he's got the quality to go higher, and now he's going to be playing with Marseille, playing in European competition next season. And I think that is such a great spotlight for a Canadian player. And like you said, it shows that we can kind of produce these almost like gems of players. And I mean, he didn't look out of place against a France midfield in these friendlies of a literal living legend, N'Golo Kanté, and Champions League winners Tchouameni and Camavinga, and then he comes to the Copa, and plays against Lionel Messi, Enzo Fernandez, Angel Di Maria. Literally name your all-star, and he looks like he's on. I don't want to say obviously not on Messi's level, but on those guys' level.
He can get there.
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think that's really exciting, and I like that you kind of bring him up because, it's just it is really exciting to see a player like that and going, yeah, he's Canadian, and we kind of have him for...
Yeah, to just think, to me, it's just the fact that you can think he started here, with the tools that, whatever tools we have. Because there is, I think, especially when it comes to the Olympics or, even football, soccer, for any sports that maybe we're not as strong in, there's a desire to outreach and take people who have dual citizenship, right? Which is fair. I mean, that's part of the
part of it,
strategy, right? But to just think that you don't actually have to be Argentinian, and then just so happen to also be Canadian to play. You can actually come from here,
that we can
learn the skills, play these leagues, and still learn and develop enough to where you move on even higher, like you said, to Europe or wherever.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. Because for so long, the men's national team was just made up of guys that didn't make their national team, and no disrespect to that, because I think that is kind of part of Canada, as we were saying earlier with diversity. It is just really nice to see, okay, we have this in Canada. We don't need to go, okay, who's Italian but didn't make the team this time out,
right?
Because
it also produces an effect, I think, of morale where it's kind of just everyone's here because this was their second shot. Yeah. Which, fair enough. But then when the team goes out there to play, you're well, you take a second-rate Italian player, then Canada's up against Italy. You're going to say, well,
obviously,
Italy's going to win. They have the better guy.
Yeah.
Assumedly.
Yeah.
So I think it comes. That's part of it as well.
Yeah, and I think it shows because now, like, looking forward, like, down, like, 10 years down the line, it shows that, like, a Canadian kid right now who's 10, 12 years old that wants to go pro, obviously, in years to come, he doesn't have to leave his family behind, leave his country. Like, he can do it in, say, CPL, then MLS, and then when he's a little bit older, like Ishmael Kone was 20, he can... Obviously, that's still not old, but he's not leaving the country at 12. His family's not uprooting to Italy, Germany, Argentina, wherever. Yeah. Like, he can do it here, get the skills, hone his craft, and then go on to Europe or wherever he, like, the journey would take him. So I think that that's also a very important part of it because, when you see a person that kind of was developed in Italy, has lived in Italy, and then they're playing for Canada, it's like, okay, but what's that doing for the Canadian game?
Yes, yeah. Especially when at the end of the tournament, they're just going to fly back to 5,000 kilometers away.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, we don't get that really return of investment back in that team because the team is just dissolved, basically.
Yeah, they just, they're not in around the game here for a little bit. Mm-hmm. They literally just... Well, I wanted to go to the World Cup or I wanted to go to Copa, whatever. But now it's like, okay, like it is still great to have those options because I do know that we're kind of courting some dual citizens who are very exciting right now.
Yeah.
But it is also nice to go, but we don't have to.
Right.
Whereas before it was, if we want a team, like this is what we have to do.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like, okay, like it'd be really nice to get this guy. But at the
let's
end of
see
the
our
day,
other options.
Exactly.
You can look around.
Exactly.
And especially when there isn't a lot of money in the game, so you can't necessarily buy the best talent.
Yeah.
You really have to look and, really scout deeper.
Yeah, and I think, like we said, like with Ishmael Kone and now Bombito, it really does just show, like, okay, like, we have it here. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really good for our program. And... Now, going to get a little bit more negative. What kind of, I don't think it was necessarily a disappointing tournament, but what kind of disappointed you, I would say, the most about this little run?
I think there were times, definitely, where the team was a bit lackluster. Mm-hmm. I think ultimately it would have been nice if because some of the victories didn't really feel like victories.
Okay.
Because when you end, we tied with Chile, or when it just ends up in penalty shootout, a win's a win.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice if, that win was just 1-0 or 2-0 instead.
Yeah.
So, especially in that third game where you really just need to hold out for 120 seconds.
Yeah.
Just keep that ball off your side and you'll be good.
And you'll get third place.
2-1, but you fumble that for whatever reason. And, so there were definitely some disappointing times. I would just say you need the confidence, I guess.
Yeah.
But a more solid win, a more solid victory would have been nice to see.
Yeah, and I like that you say that because I've been harping on about our missed chances this tournament because there was games, like even the Uruguay game, we had a lot of chances that we just didn't put away. Yeah. It's like even the fact that it was 2-1 going into that extra couple minutes for stoppages, it really shouldn't have been like you were saying, it should have been a more comfortable victory as opposed to, oh shoot, now we've drawn and we're going into penalty.
Yeah.
Like Chile, we had our opportunities as well. Like even our Peru game, we won that 1-0, probably could have been more. Even against Argentina, especially in that first game, we had our chances. Like we did have, it's like you're saying about confidence. I think it's the confidence of them not finishing. Like they're not finishing their dinner. Like we get these opportunities and then we don't score. Mm-hmm. So I think I would agree. I would say that us not kind of having those bigger margins, and I think that kind of does come down to, like I said, those missed opportunities that we just don't put
for
away.
Whatever reason. They just, and I don't know, because it did seem at times watching that it was like a confidence thing, almost like they were just as shocked that they had gotten as far as they did
Maybe.
as I was, you know.
Maybe
Possible. And I'm not undermining, like, you know, ultimately we did win, you know, so many games.
Yeah.
And we performed decently in shootouts. Like, those do count at the end of the day. But yeah, when you have all those opportunities, those chances, like we said earlier, if you're going to play, you got to play to win.
Yeah.
If that's a bit dirty, that's a bit dirty. But when you have those chances, you have those opportunities, you just have to take them.
Yeah, because especially at this top level, as we saw against Uruguay, especially, you get punished. And,
Yes.
And we did, because, like I said, it probably should have been, 3-4-1 going into that stoppage time. Like, at that point, there's no danger.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going in 2-1, and then obviously concede that goal to make it 2-2. So finishing our chances, especially going on to now the World Cup, is something that's, I think, something that's really going to have to improve if we want to go from, well, we can put up a good fight and maybe beat this team, to, okay, we actually have the players, we have the quality, because we're, say, finishing now.
Yeah.
We actually we can do this.
This is the plan. Now we got to go execute that plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of just, well, maybe Jonathan David will get us a goal.
Yeah.
Maybe.
If the wind blows right, you know,
Yeah.
all those kinds of things.
Yeah, you know, and no disrespect to David, he was our top goal scorer, and honestly, of our strikers, probably had the least amount of chances. I don't know why I said him, but yeah, no, he did have a very good tournament.
He did. Yes.
I thought his overall play was, probably our best for in an attacking standpoint, probably outside of Schaffelberg. I thought David was really good. I didn't mean to rag on him. I don't know why.
Sorry,
I said
Mr.
him.
David.
Yeah, sorry, Jonathan David, if you're listening. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things, because, like, you see that. I mean, you see it in games in, like, the Premier League, Serie A, like, you know, Chelsea doesn't finish their chances, Juventus doesn't finish their chances, and then it comes back and bites them.
Yeah.
You just don't want that to be a regular occurrence. We don't want to be, every time we're almost there,
Yeah.
we shoot ourselves in the foot.
Yeah, you don't want that hesitation in
Ex-
that moment. You don't want to build a habit of it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's something to definitely nip in the bud, if you will,
Yes.
going into 2026, the World Cup.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now looking past Copa America, kind of what do you look forward to most with this Canada team? I know we got an international break coming up in September. We're playing the States and Mexico, and then I believe next year's the Gold Cup, and then obviously 2026 is the World Cup. So kind of like, what are you looking forward to getting to watch this team again?
Well, what I'm hoping for, I'll say, rather than what I'm looking forward
That's
to,
fair.
is that we perform as we have performed this past tournament.
Yeah.
You know, we beat out USA and Mexico.
Yeah.
You hope that you can repeat those results
Consistently.
Exactly. That's what I think is the long-term hope, is just consistency.
Yeah.
That this wasn't kind of just like a
one-off.
a happenstance.
Yeah.
You know, we got everybody on a bad day and we ended up in fourth.
Yeah.
But that, like, this is like, okay, all of this was for something.
Okay.
So I would just hope, for that consistency, and to, like we said, you know, build upon what they've learned in this, and I guess just develop the team a little bit more as well. They got a lot of fresh faces, and you know, with Jesse Marsch just coming in here, so just kind of get themselves settled and an identity.
Yeah.
And then moving.
I think that's really valid, actually, is to make sure that this isn't just a one-off thing of, man, we did really good at that one Copa. Mm-hmm. You know, like, make it, like, next, like, at the Gold Cup, we now have to be considered one of the favorites.
Right.
I would say, honestly, pushing for the trophy, if not lifting that trophy, and then taking that into the World Cup. And like you said about the identity, you know, whether it's we start kind of playing a little bit dirtier, or maybe Jesse Marsch wants to adopt a free-flowing style or a more defensive style, or however he may do it. But yeah, no, I would agree with just really building upon kind of what we've already done, mixed with what we just did, the Copa, and now kind of bringing that into these friendlies coming up. I think beating Mexico and the USA in these friendlies would be one, bragging rights, and two, just really, again, showing that we didn't just catch, like you said, these teams on a bad day.
I think it would set them up for success if they were able to. Because as I said earlier, I really think it's important for Team Canada, who's kind of an underdog right now still, to really reinvent the game in their own way.
Yeah.
And I think coming out of Copa, I mean, obviously we had, those missed opportunities, but we won a lot.
Yeah.
And when you're an up-and-coming team that wins a lot, you don't really have the chance to look as deep into mistakes that you make.
Yeah.
So that offers you the room to kind of build upon what you're doing, come up with new strategies, and then test and execute them. So that's what if there's one thing I could really hope to see, it's that we don't just try and copy what the other top teams are doing, or, try and skim other top players and their strategies, but really just come up with something that we can do and works to our advantage.
Yeah, and I think with Copa, I saw that Canada's going to get, I think it was like 8 to 10 million from like competition winnings for getting as far as they did. So I think that money could go a long way into kind of getting to develop these systems, getting to develop these habits, and like, setting stuff up for the up and coming like Canadian players, instead of, like you said, just, okay, well, what's X, Y, and Z top nations doing? Let's do that.
Right.
Instead, it's gonna be like, okay, this is what we're doing, and this is why it's gonna work, and whatnot. And then even on the pitch, more so kind of from a smaller aspect, I think getting to develop this play style and whatnot, I think that is kind of what these friendlies are helpful for, right? Because they're, at the end of the day, it's just a friendly. You know, it's not like I joked about the bragging rights. That's really all these friendlies are, is, oh, we beat you. Like, that's really all it is. So, like, if you go out there and you try something new and you lose, it's not the end of the world. So, like, I think that these friendlies will be a nice way, like, dip our toe into, can we try something different?
Right.
So,
I mean, we came out better than we thought we would.
Yeah.
I think that's fair to say. So there isn't too much to lose here.
Exactly.
By just, going out there and testing, see what works.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, and like, that's why being an underdog, I think, kind of suits us, because as the underdog, because we are still very much, like you said, an underdog nation, there's no expectation. There's nothing for us to lose. If we beat you, it looks worse on you. Instead of, if you beat us, it's kind of like, well, that was expected.
Exactly.
So, obviously, I do think that we need a shift in that. But at this moment in time, it's kind of like, oh, they beat us? And I think that's kind of a nice place to be in at the moment.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Yeah, and so one final thing for you. Just, does this make you want to watch and support Canadian football a little bit more frequently? Instead of, I know I called you a casual fan, in which you took offense to. So I'm going to bring it back to that.
I tease.
But yeah, does this kind of make you like maybe want to go out and like catch? I know you yourself have gone to a couple CPL games. Would this make you want to kind of maybe more so support it, or MLS, or even just does this make you kind of look forward to anytime a Canadian roster will get posted and let's go on a friendly,
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. If they can, like we said, keep that momentum going, if they can continually give reason for people to be invested, if this wasn't just like a one-off thing, then I could see, I don't see why not, really.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what it comes down to, right, is you need with anything, you need a reason to keep coming back. And obviously we're Canadian, we're always going to support it. But for the people that maybe don't support it as much, you need a reason to kind of really want to, right?
Well, I think too, because in Canada there is kind of that summer gap when it comes to sports, because it's not like the Blue Jays are all that hot. So if soccer can come in, and I don't see any reason why it couldn't, come in and kind of fill that gap for the 6-7 months, and that's kind of why this summer is exciting, because you had the Euros, so there's that general interest in soccer that comes up. Yeah. But then Copa's happening, Canada performs well, Olympics are going to start, Canada's women's team is in that, if they can perform well once again, then that's exciting.
Yeah.
And I could see why it would create and garner and hold interest.
And that's what it comes down to, right? Is we want to grow this, so there needs to be the interest there. And, instead of just being, summer being time for the Blue Jays.
Right.
Shout out the Blue Jays.
Shout out Blue Jays, I guess.
But
they ain't doing too hot.
No, they're not. But, instead of it just being that time, maybe it's terrible example, what's TFC doing,
Yeah.
Maybe, hopefully, they're having a better year than they are this year. Or, like you said, our women's are playing in the Olympics, so people watch that. Hopefully people get talking about that. If they make a deep run as well, that'd be especially, I think, really, really good for our program if they also get a deep run in the Olympics.
Definitely.
So, definitely valid points, I would say. I think we're cooking.
I think so.
I think so.
I think we got a good thing in the oven right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that wraps us up, I think. I think we covered a lot. We talked about a lot. We yapped.
There was yappage.
This guy's got a PhD in yapology.
This guy does.
That's
why he created a podcast.
Absolutely. And this is why this guy is on Jucasa and Indy 101.5 because he's a yapper.
I do yap on occasion.
He does. And you know what?
It's rarely as rewarding as when I am yapping with you. So.
Oh man. You know what? I'm gonna put that on the fridge. Gonna print out that quote, put it on the fridge, and quote it from Jonathan.
Get it engraved on the fridge.
Yeah. Not even printed, just it's forever on the fridge.
Forever.
And so if the people like you, we can find you on Instagram at Jonathan FMFM.
That's correct.
Yes. Look at that. I've DM'd him a few times. And you're on Jucasa when?
Right now I'm on 3 to 7, Monday to Friday.
Absolutely. And then Indy 101.5 on Wednesday nights. Is it 6 to 7?
That's correct.
Man, look at me.
Sam knows his stuff.
I'm follow his Instagram. Wow. And you can find that out on his Instagram if you follow him there.
Thank you.
And if you're liking what I'm doing, you can follow me at official Sam Little on Instagram. Subscribe here, and you can get the quickest updates. I really enjoyed getting to talk to Jonathan today. We've been talking about it for a while, getting him on here, so I'm glad that we finally got to make this work. And, if the people like you, maybe we'll have you back on. If they don't, then we'll never hear from you again.
Comment, subscribe, comment John below.
Get a John chain going. Yeah. If I get more than 5 Johns in a comment, then I have to get you back on.
God bless. Let's hope. I'm going to make 5 alt accounts.
And if we
just show back up.
And if we get less than 5, I don't talk to you ever again. So this could be the last time I talk to you, or you could be on here a lot more
Going
frequently.
Out on a high note.
There's no in between.
Well, thank you so much, Sam, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. And like I said, follow and all that fun stuff. And until next time, cheers, everyone.
And that was your Maple Footy podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Check my socials for any and all future updates at official Sam Little on Instagram, where I am most active. And until next time, live, laugh, little.